Hi everyone, I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike, and we write songs together under the name The Kelly Line,
By the way, Mike's my dad.
which makes us a father and son songwriting duo. And when we're not writing songs together, we're generally chatting about writing songs, and we thought it might be fun to share some of those thoughts with you.
This week we're talking about one of our lockdown singles, I Never Promised You Flowers. So, Michael, tell me about I Never Promised You Flowers. Tell me about I Never Promised You Flowers.
I Never Promised You Flowers. Well, it's a lockdown single, isn't it? I mean, it was pretty much written, recorded, released during lockdown, so it's always going to be a sort of significant a moment, I think. As I recall, we had a couple of lines floating around before. Soundtrack of a Bloodless Coup.
Yeah, that was the first bit I remember writing. That was the last time I came back to Cheltenham, pre-lockdown.
Yeah.
With the...
Yeah. What does it mean for me and you? It's the soundtrack of a bloodless coup. Something borrowed, something blue. I never promised you.
Yeah, I we didn't have the chorus yet, but that was the first bit I wrote. And I seem to remember that you were not a huge fan.
Well, I wasn't convinced. I kind of like the line, soundtrack of a bloodless coup.
You like the bit you did?
I wasn't convinced with the music. But then you came home just before lockdown, didn't you? Sort of like 14th. Actually, I can date it. It was the 13th of March because we spent the 14th of March in the recording studio. That was a Saturday. And I drove you back to Cardiff early in the morning.
Yes, that happened. I remember.
And I think the key to this song is the conversations that we'd had many times about how we couldn't believe the way the truth is kind of like portrayed and perceived these days. And I think the key line for me is the truth is what the people believe. In other words, it doesn't seem to matter what is true and what isn't true. Just what matters what people believe.
Yeah. That was definitely, that's the kind of the full stop moment, the wow bit of the song, isn't it? It's the point at which all of the bits of the song kind of take a pause for a second and you're like, yeah, that's what the song's about. It's the focal line of this whole song, really.
Yeah, I think so. And you put it at you said it was an end line. You
yeah,
moved it to the end of a chorus.
Yeah. You kind of, when you're thinking about where the line's going to go in the song, you kind of have to think what effect do you want it to have, because either it might be a big impact line in that it launches you into something, in which case like it makes sense to have it at the start of a chorus, or the end of a pre-chorus, something that because a pre-chorus is a section that has momentum anyway, so putting it at the end of that, launching it into the chorus makes sense. But the truth it appears is what people believe kind of has it's a line that you want to think about, so it made sense to have it at the end of the kind of building section, like a peak in the song.
I seem
where
to,
the music
you often say to me, so what's this song about?
Yeah.
Help me understand this song we're writing. What's this song about? And I think that really helps because you've got to articulate it. You've got all these things floating around your head, like the kind of phrases, lines, lyrics. And as soon as you say this is in a nutshell what it's about, I think then everything else slotted into place, because that kind of truth is what the people believe. It's like the basis of all kind of magic, isn't it? I remember playing around with sleight of mouth, sleight of hand, which is what magicians do. You see what they want you to see.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as we had that line, that kind of gave us the obvious card introduction by way of a card trick, the metaphor, and then from there it just flowed. Then as soon as you sang the first couple of lines,
because musically what happened after we did the that pre-chorus, which you weren't a huge fan of, I knew that bit wasn't a verse, so it wasn't like the bulk of the song, and it also wasn't the chorus, it wasn't the peak of the song, it was a transition bit, so I just needed to show you how it fitted in with the rest of the music, which meant I had to write the rest of the music. I was like,
go on then, sing the first couple of lines then, because from that moment onwards we didn't look back.
So gather ye round, I'll perform a trick for you. just to prove that fairy tales do come true. How many cards am I holding? How many cards do you see? The answer, my friends, as always depends on how many you want there to be.
See, like, I knew once we had that pre-chorus, I kind of could feel how the rest of the song would work around it, and I just needed to find those bits and get across the vibe that I could feel was meant to be in front of that pre-chorus and actually do it.
I think vibe's an interesting word, because the other question you often ask me, because obviously I can't sing for toffee and I can't really play the guitar, is who do you hear playing this song? What sort of style? What sort of vibe? I mean, you can, if there's something in your head, you just sing it to me, you just play it to me, whereas I've got to kind of try and find a way of communicating to you what I mean. And I remember saying I hear a kind of Woody Guthrie here, which is, I actually seem to recall that gave me the line, or gave us the line, so gather ye round. I just had this kind of Woody Guthrie getting off a bus or something and just saying to people, look, gather ye round, I'll sing a song for you, kind of, which gave us a vibe.
You wanted something relatively simple, stripped back, direct. You didn't want to... It's interesting, actually, in a song about, like, the truth being concealed by sleight of hand, you wanted something that was very direct and free of that artifice.
Yeah, almost honest, like a kind of a real honesty, because it is so simple. I mean, you can't hide. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm. You're going to tell me now you never make mistakes with chords or whatever. But I guess in a band, you know, those. I guess in a band, those kind of little tiny little mistakes are kind of covered up to a degree anyway, by other people playing. But there's no hiding place with an acoustic track, I don't think. I'd guess.
No, not really. Like in another single we recently did, Sure As Hell Not Through, there was a line that I could never sing. Like, I sang the right words, I sang the right pitch, but it just didn't sound right. And rather than myself trying to get better, I got my good friend Lydia to just sing on top of it and stack it with harmony and hide my inadequacies, which you can't really do if it's just one voice
and one guitar, and that's it. You really are on your own. But I think that kind of, I think, took you to gather you round, and I had this kind of image of like a magician sort of doing tricks. But then that also sort of takes you into that, certainly how once upon a time, sort of the politician standing on the stump, speaking in the street or at Hyde Park Corner, that kind of thing, and getting people gather ye round. And I seem to recall it then the song started to come together really quickly.
Yeah, like shortly after we had that first verse, your notes for the second verse coalesced and the chorus came together pretty quickly. Because I'm pretty sure with most of the song, except for the middle eight, it was written out, ready to be sung to. It wasn't like notes that I had to we had to kind of feel out how it would put together. You were like, oh, this is pretty much the structure. And it was just a case of singing it.
Well, once it started, it just began to flow. And I remember the conversations that we had about kind of like, it's just incredible, isn't it? That, you know, that those kind of phrases like a lie told often enough eventually becomes the truth. And we've been chatting about things like that. And that the truth, it doesn't matter, it's what people believe. But the other thing that I just find incredulous is how... people basically say something on a Monday, and then on a Tuesday say, no, I didn't say that, or I didn't mean that, or I didn't do that. And you're like, well, no, you did, because it's there on record, it's and so on. But it's almost that people seem to be able to get away with that these days. And that kind of, you make a promise on a Monday, and then on a Tuesday you say, well, I don't know, I never made that promise.
Yeah.
Which
you're taken out of context.
I'm not quite sure where Flowers came along, but it ended up for me being like the obvious metaphor of.
I think that was the line you had hanging around for the longest, even though it's arguably like the least important narratively to the song. Like it's a cool line because it just sounds cool, but flowers don't have any particularly deep meaning.
romance, I guess, relationships, and I guess if you just said, okay, we've just written a song, and one of the lines is, "I never promised you flowers," you might think that's a kind of, I never promised you much at the start of a relationship.
Yeah, but
Maybe
it doesn't really have any deeper narrative or thematic meaning than that. Like a lot of the rest of the song is quite focused, but like the line you had hanging around for longest and what ended up being the title, I don't think is actually the most important line of the song at all. It's another instance of something kind of being concealed. Like, if you just saw the title "I Never Promised You Flowers," you'd think it's about one thing.
Yeah.
It's actually about something else.
Well, that's what I quite like. I quite like that. This is a song. This song isn't about flowers, or maybe it is. I quite like that that bit of intrigue. Go on, sing the chorus as we're talking about that particular line. Then.
I never promised you flowers. I just sowed the seed. I told you what you wanted to hear. Showed you just what you need. Oh, the truth it appears is what the people believe.
Well,
Yep. Can I talk about the musical sleight of hand?
yeah. Go on then. Oh yeah, this is I remember you telling me about this ages ago. This is clever, isn't it?
Yeah, I liked the idea that we're talking about stuff being concealed, stuff being not quite what you expected underneath the surface. In a lot of ways about this, like under the magician's hanky, you expect there to be a ping pong ball, but it's actually a budgerigar or something like that. So I wanted to.
What did you? Sorry, have you just said something about a budgerigar? What was that? Did I miss that?
I couldn't remember what type of birds magicians had. I remember now it's a dove, not a budgie.
Or a canary, isn't it? Or a dove, yeah. Budgerigar. That's fantastic.
Not sure where budgie came from. I wanted to fit in some musical bits that were like not quite what you expected. So, for example, there's a bit in the chorus where I use a chord that isn't in the key of the song. But it works quite well. It's a pretty common change chord that you do, but it kind of gives things a kind of sinister twist. Like you think it's going one way, and then suddenly the whole kind of context of the tune changes a bit. So the do what you wanted to hear, showed you just what you need. It changes from that major chord to that minor chord, which is not necessarily what you'd expect. So that's one way I did it. But the other thing, the bit that I found much more fun, I remember being very excited writing this, was I reharmonized the chorus the second to last time. So most of the time when you hear the chorus, it's using pretty like common happy chords, like most songs ever have had that kind of chord progression, and it uses all those chords. But the second to last time you hear the chorus, it's exactly the same tune, but the chords underneath have taken on this really like minor, sinister kind of air. It's kind of like you're pulling back the curtain and showing what's beneath the surface. So that second to last chorus goes, I never promised you flowers, I just sowed the seed. I told you what you wanted to hear, showed you just what you need. And I just really like kind of, there's stuff that you might not notice, but it hints at that sinister undertow that is what the song's about. The truth being concealed by parties.
Yeah. It's funny, and I'm sure there's some people who don't listen to the song or listen to it 3 minutes and that kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't think about most songs at that kind of level of detail. But obviously, if you've just written it, then
well, yeah, like I don't think many people listen to songs in that kind of level of detail for like every song. But the idea is that you're trying to kind of hint at it. Like you don't want them to have to look hard to see these tricks. You just want them to know the tricks. It's like when you're reading a book, you don't want to go, this is clearly a metaphor, right here that this is a message that the author is trying to convey.
You don't want to think too much, basically, do you?
Yeah, you want it to just kind of subconsciously slip in.
I tell you the other thing. There are times when I look back at songs we've written over the years, and I can't remember the detail. I can't remember where I was when we wrote it. I can't remember where you were. Can't remember what came first. And then there are other bits of songs that I can just remember so clearly. And this one, I'm like going, the verse, the first verse, yeah, I like that. I now like the pre-chorus. Now I know it's a pre-chorus because it just leads you into the chorus.
Yeah.
And I'm there thinking, we got a song. We need a second verse, and I need to make it scan. We need to make it scan. And I wanted to play with it around this idea of perception, and that in fact nothing's really changed. But if your perception's changed, in a sense, well, it has in your head certainly. In other words, you can be optimistic about something or pessimistic about something. It's exactly the same thing, but you've just changed people's minds. And I guess that's what good campaigners and good leaders do in a sense. And I wanted to play around with this idea of, look, your glass is still half empty, but instead of thinking of it as half empty, you now think of it as half full. Now, that's a real trick if you can do that. And that was the basic idea of the second verse. But tell you what, to try and make that scan, I spent at least 2 days frowning, just sitting there in bed, in the shower, when I was going for a run, and I just couldn't. And I knew I was like 1 or 2 lines away from finishing the lyrics. Sing me the second verse because nobody, honestly, nobody, with the possible exception of your mother who was getting fed up at this point, would know what a struggle it was to make this scan.
So gather you round, can you do a trick for me? Just to prove how much better things could be. Take your half-empty glasses and fill them halfway. Let the people perceive, maybe even believe it will somehow be better someday.
Very good. And I really love the build.
Yeah, it gives you, that last line gives you a chance to like sink your teeth into it and put a bit more aggression into it. Not really aggression, but it's kind of like desperate hopefulness, like hoping that it'll somehow be better someday is you're kind of yearning for that, whereas the rest of the song has kind of been a bit sat back and kind of resigned even.
Don't you think the penultimate line though gives you a really good lead into that last line? Let the people perceive, maybe even believe. I kind of like that.
That internal rhyme's really nice. Perceive and believe. Yeah.
And you gave, I remember you putting in the twist of if we start the song with I'm doing a trick for you. And then the second verse is, can you do a trick for me?
Yeah. I don't think that was me, actually.
Wasn't it? I seem to... I don't know.
I'm almost certain it was you.
Possibly. I don't recall that, but, I mean, okay, I'll happily take credit for it, but I was giving you credit there, mate. I was giving you some... Yeah.
I mean, I'm great.
Well, if people were listening to this, it sounds like kind of I wrote lyrics and you put it to music, which is not completely true. So, and I don't know. I seem to recall that you gave me that idea of if I've done a trick for you, you do a trick for me, kind of, which I kind of like that. And anyway, that was for me. That was the last piece of the jigsaw when I managed to get the half-empty glass bit sorted, which was, God Almighty, was a struggle. Then it all seemed to come together, and we had a song.
Fair enough. Shall we play that song now?
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, the last question, I quite like asking you this, because I know that you've got your the songs that you particularly have enjoyed writing and enjoyed performing, and I've got them, and some of them are the same, and some of them are different. What do you think of this? Is this up there for you?
Yeah, I really like this one. Yeah.
And this is the one that if I could sing and play the guitar and perform, this is the one that I think I would like to be able to.
You're well on your way.
I would like to be able to do. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. And when you when you put it all together, which you do, when you put it all together, I'm pretty comfortable with how this sounds. So yeah, go on, play the song for us.
Cool.
So gather ye around, I'll perform a trick for you, just to prove that fairy tales do come true. How many cards am I holding? How many cards do you see? The answer, my friends, as always depends on how many you want there to be. What does it mean for me and you? It's the soundtrack of a bloodless coup. Something borrowed, something blue. I never promised you flowers, I just sowed the seed. I told you what you wanted to hear, showed you just what you need. Oh, the truth, it appears, is what the people believe. So gather ye round, can you do a trick for me? Just to prove how much better things could be. Take your half-empty glasses and fill them halfway, and let the people perceive, maybe even believe, it will somehow be better someday. What does it mean for you and me? A suggestion of prosperity, no mention of austerity. I never promised you flowers, you know I just sowed the seed. I told you what you wanted to hear, showed you just what you need. Oh, the truth, it appears, is what the people believe. So close your eyes, let me whisper in your ear tales of how things could be. Let me show you the prize and take away those nagging fears, and see what you wanted to see. I never promised you flowers, no, I just sowed the seed. I told you what you wanted to hear, showed you just what you need. Oh, the truth, it appears, I never promised you flowers, I just sowed the seed. I told you what you wanted to hear, showed you just what you need. Oh, the truth, it appears, is what the people believe.